So this chapter wraps up the site planning process with steps 5 and 6. But before we get into step 5, it's important that we talk a little bit about page length, content placement, and usability. The initial visible screen of a web page is extremely important space because that provides the first glimpse of the content and is the first opportunity to satisfy visitors' content needs and usability expectations. Well, one thing you need to remember, though, is you don't control your visitors' monitor resolution or scrolling habits. And so you need to make sure that your important links are above and to the left of the potential scroll zone, and not just the important links, but also your visual identity content, such as your logos and names. You want that in the scroll zone, or out of the scroll zone, sorry about that, above and to the left of the scroll zone. And the scroll zone is the area beyond the initial visible screen. Most of the time, visitors aren't going to bother scrolling when they first glimpse at your website. So keep that in mind. As you learned in the last chapter, your homepage introduces your site by informing visitors who you are, what you offer, and where they can find it. So one way to maximize the initial visual content is to use those carousels or the slideshows that we talked about. Another way to increase usability and promote unity, you should also position visual identity and navigation content above and to the left of the scroll zone on all your underlying pages as well. One train of thought is that you limit the web page's length to 2 screens of content. However, trends are really changing that, and more websites are becoming one-page sites that just scroll on and on. I would challenge you to do a little bit of your own research on that. In fact, we'll take another look at that later on in class. So if you can't limit a web page to 2 screens, just give them a way to go back to the top of the page with a link throughout the page. And pages intended to be printed should be left full length without top of the page's links. So maybe even consider having a printable version of that page made available through a link. There's actually been a lot of research that has been done with all of this. Sorry about that. There's been here, just some of your notes. The initial visible screen is extremely valuable. Place all the information to the above and to the left of the scroll zones. There's been a lot of research that has been done telling us where to put stuff. So there are these eye tracking studies that use various technologies to produce heat maps in which data is represented by color. Now, these heat maps are created by analyzing the movement of a visitor's eyes as they view a web page. Over the past several years, eye tracking studies suggest that a site's visitors typically first look at the top and left areas of a page and then look down at the right. And that's why it's so important, and that's why we talk about putting all of your important information out of the scroll zone. Another thing to keep in mind, though, because you cannot control the monitor resolution, is what kind of page layout you're going to use when it comes to the page width. You have 2 main options right now. You can either go the fixed width or the liquid. Fixed width sets a specific pixel width for the page. A benefit of this is the layout is consistent no matter the resolution. But the downside is visitors using a lower resolution may need to scroll horizontally, which can be really annoying. But then you have the liquid page layout, which also works well when you're trying to make your site more mobile friendly. And it sets the width of the page as a percentage of the browser window. So no matter the monitor resolution or size, the page will expand to fill the window, maximizing that viewable content. The only downside is you lose some control over the size or placement of images and text. So remember, to promote unity and maintain visual identity across pages, you want to use visual consistency when choosing color and typeface and when positioning content across all pages at your site. You can create this visual consistency by repeating design features such as typeface, content position, color scheme, and actual content like the name, the logo, and your major links across all pages at a site. Inconsistent use of this confuses visitors. Then you get into color and visual contrast, and this is all part of step 5. Step 5 is dealing with the look and the feel of the site. In the color and visual contrast, you need to remember that color has a power to influence moods, culture. There are cultural implications of color, and your target audience's expectations can also be reflected with color. Applying color scheme to the background, graphic art, and illustrations uniformly, and then text across all pages can really help build visual consistency throughout your site. You should choose background and text colors that provide sufficient contrast to enhance readability and that permit print legibility. Remember, the greater the contrast, the greater the readability. But you also want to remember to limit the number of colors in your scheme to 3 major colors. Apply the color scheme to these across all pages. Choose to enhance readability. Choose graphics that actually match your color scheme. And you can use what are called color matching softwares like Color Scheme Designer or Color Wheel Pro, Color Shade, or Color Cache. And they're tools you can use to create sample website color schemes based on color theory. And you can preview the color scheme in a browser and apply it to your web pages. So in here you can see even the pictures that they used have the same bluish tones, but how they used the blues and the reds consistently, and a lot of the visual identity elements are in the same place on each page. To set up the look and feel of a site, you use CSS in formatting. So we've learned through Codecademy, CSS is used for the look and the feel, and it allows web designers to use a text document called a style sheet to control the appearance of one or more pages. So in the style sheet, you have these styles, which are groups of formatting properties that create visual consistency. And you create style rules, which are specifications that allow you to define one or more formatting properties, which are called the declarations, and their values for specific HTML tags, which are our selectors. This really helps maintain visual consistency. And when you use it, you have 3 different types of style sheets. You have an inline style, which is inserted within a tag, an internal style sheet, which is inserted within a page's heading tags, and then the external style sheet, which is saved in a folder with the site's pages and then linked to within the HTML document's head. So you can see an example of an external style sheet in Dreamweaver on the left and a sample style sheet in a CSS editor on the right. Another thing to think of is page layout. The page layout is the arrangement of content elements, and it can ensure the visual consistency across a website's pages. A well-designed layout creates a sense of balance and order, which is really important for website visitors because they'll find it more appealing and reassuring. Display certain items consistently in the same place on all pages, such as the logo and name, the search feature, links, content area. You want your visitors to be comfortable. So you can see how the elements here are placed in the same place on each page. And some designers use what's called a layout grid to help with this. It's underlying structure of rows and columns. You know where those rows and columns intersect is called a cell. It allows you to precisely position page content. And you can draw this on paper when you're planning your site, or you can even create a grid in your editors. And then you get into the CSS and page layout. So style sheets can also be used to control page layout by dividing a page into sections, such as a header or navigation, and using divs. And you've had lots of practice with that in Codecademy. And many designers will also use tables. Going back to what I was saying earlier about grids, tables have those columns and rows. You have your cells. And you can actually create a web page layout within a table. So you can see how they use a table here to show listings by channel and time. But there are various properties you need to know to be comfortable with tables. And just a a handful of those are the float, the cell spacing, and cell padding.